I'm your cult boyfriend. We're talking about Roswell season one today. I'm excited. I really like it. I really like it. I think it's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of cool ideas. The showrunner is Jason Katims. Jason Katims developed this show. Jason Katims is, along with Peter Berg, one of the guys, one of the masterminds behind Friday Night Lights. Jason Katims definitely gets teen drama, teen television. And we've talked about Friday Night Lights on this channel. I already like Roswell more than Friday Night Lights. I had a couple issues with Friday Night Lights, but Jason Katims, I'm reasonably impressed with what he was able to accomplish with Roswell. Another person who has a lot of involvement creatively with Roswell is David Nutter. We've also talked about David Nutter a lot on this channel because I went a bit obsessive crazy with a film of his called Disturbing Behavior with James Marsden, Katie Holmes, and Nick Stahl. It went a bit fucking nuts and covered it a bunch of times. I love it. So really what we're getting here is some Friday Night Lights, some there's disturbing behavior here, and it's definitely X-Files. What it made me wonder more than anything else, Roswell, obviously it's a science fiction uh, teen drama. It centers around a group of three aliens who are trying to figure out where they come from, who they are, the typical teenage questions that we all have, like who are we, what's our purpose, do we have a destiny, do we have a grand design, who am I supposed to love, is there a soul mate, was I designed to love a specific person? These are all wonderful things that Roswell tackles, and I think tackles fully. But what it got me thinking about more than anything was like this was late 90s, so 99. What about the 90s? And you can leave this in the comments too if you have a theory about this. What about the 90s made like a kind of sci-fi television explosion occur? Like what exactly was it? I have my own theories, and if you need me to provide some reasoning behind why I think there was a sci-fi explosion, within television, I would tell you that three very successful Star Trek shows, The X-Files being a massive hit, and like shows like Roswell even appealing to the WB faction of hip teenagers. I would call that kind of a sci-fi explosion, and I'm sure there's other shows that I'm just not listing here. There definitely are. And film received kind of the same sci-fi explosive treatment, kind of, not as much as television. That's why it's like unique, right? And you can't just tell me that sci-fi is always popular because it's not always popular like this, right? Like to this degree. So what about the 90s kind of fostered a massive creative and public interest within conspiracy theories and aliens? Is it that it's almost like a post-secrecy age? Like we are aware that our government are doing completely shady things? You know, the Clinton administration, is it just completely not trusting the government at all? Is it the fact that like 90s people of the 90s had this kind of anxiety as they approached the new millennium, as if something big was about to happen, as if something big should have happened, like some sort of alien encounter, a public alien encounter, that is? Is it that the internet, and this is probably my biggest thing here, the internet was like exploding, right? That's the explosion of the internet. That's the introduction of the internet into the popular zeitgeist, into making us all cyborgs eventually, right? Like it was the introduction of the internet itself. Perhaps that sort of futurism, that sort of futuristic quality within the human condition was making us think very differently. Or maybe there's just this natural human inclination to wanting to think that we're not alone. I know that like all human beings are lonely, so no human being wants to be alone and want to feel part of a community. But I guess maybe human beings as a whole have this kind of characteristic of I don't want to be alone in this universe. And I think it does go along with the internet idea because the internet was like a bunch of information and misinformation coming at you all at once, and conspiracy theory websites along with porn websites, I think is what popularized the internet or made it at all useful when it first started. That kind of distillation, confluence of conspiracy and boners. So with Roswell, you get the X-Files meets Dawson's Creek, you know, which isn't to make Roswell sound derivative. I think it's fairly unique and original, but it is fun seeing our standard archetypes, our standard postmodern teen drama archetypes interacting with things that you would normally find in the X-Files. If we remove the literalism of these kids are aliens and look at it metaphorically, there's a lot of cool stuff there. Max, Michael, and Isabel, we can view it as kind of extremely dark and pessimistic. The government is out to exploit, torture, and murder teenagers for simply trying to live a life outside of their own predestined roles. I think there's a lot of coded language for queerness. I think there's a queer subtext to the piece as well. You have this group of kids who are all trying to come to terms with who they are and figure out who they are, not only emotionally but or physically but sexually and romantically as well, and some of the conversations that they have with other people feel like coming out. They feel like coming out scenarios. And the fact that they are so secretive about it and know that everyone will treat them differently afterwards as not only pariahs, but as threats, terroristic ones at that. And I'm aware that they rebooted this show. Actually, I think Julie Plec, who did the Vampire Diaries, was pretty instrumental in the reboot. And you know, I have mostly a love-hate relationship with her. I thought she did fairly well on most of the Vampire Diaries, and then on a great deal of it, she did uh, miserably. But I know that she was instrumental in the reboot. And I know in the reboot they do make the queer subtext part of the text of the piece. So like I think that Alex and Michael are gay in the reboot, which is fine, which is like which means that I'm not I'm not grasping at straws. I'm not shadow boxing over here analytically. There is definitely a queer subtext to the piece. So let's just go characters. Let's just talk about characters and hopefully we'll end up talking about some really cool things. I mean, overall, I really enjoyed myself. Is it a brilliant show? Well, it's nowhere to the level of a Dawson's Creek. It's nowhere to the level of a One Tree Hill, and definitely nowhere near Gossip Girl. If you don't know, I think Gossip Girl is the greatest work of art ever made, and this doesn't even come close to scratching the surface of Gossip Girl's genius. It's better than Buffy season one. You know, I think it's better than Friday Night Lights season one, and brilliant is like a pretty big word to use, but the arcs that were completed, the themes that were fully explored in the first season, I'm pretty impressed by. Like every character gets a full arc, basically. And every theme gets properly treated and examined. Extraordinarily competent. It's above competent. I really enjoyed myself. It's very good. Hopefully seasons 2 and 3 will be just a little bit better, and I can tell you that it's like masterful, but not quite yet. But who cares? It's a great show. I had a visitor from another planet. Max. Max is really cool. I like Max. Max is our postmodern brat hero. The core philosophy of Roswell is really conveyed through Max. Um, I think Max is an excellent character. We see Max fall in love with Liz. We see Max's dynamics with his sister Isabel kind of strengthen and change. We see his dynamic with Michael grow and get frustrated and ultimately grow stronger as well. We see Max kind of live his life existentially. You know, he is a pure existentialist. And that's what's most perfect about Max. He also befriends people like Alex and Maria as well, and even Kyle to a certain degree. Per. This is going to be so distracting. You're going to be so distracting. But the show, when it's at its most philosophically interesting, is when we're focusing on Max's resolve, on the fact that he refuses to be limited by anything destiny, prophecy. He doesn't care for it. Or at least he's trying so desperately to rebel against it. And that's what makes him a postmodern brat because he's rejecting a grand narrative, beyond grand. He is rejecting a cosmic narrative. He's rejecting a nearly biblical one. He has lines like, I'm not going to do or live my life. I'm not going to do what any book tells me to. I'm not going to live my life according to what any book says. Very difficult not to read biblically into that subtextually. Hello, 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 hello. Keep saying it's our life. We make the choices. We are the masters of our destinies, the writers of the future. Gotta get rid of you, Cat. You are distracting me so much. Hold on, guys. Show gets very interesting when a fourth alien shows up named Tess, who Max can't help but feel like he's completely drawn to because he's like engineered, biologically engineered to be completely infatuated over this woman, over this young girl. And he can't help himself. It's a physical involuntary sexual and romantic reaction to seeing Tess, even though he's choosing, like he wants to love Liz. But there's this thing called destiny. There's this thing called grand design that he's rebelling against, rejecting the grand narrative, the cosmic narrative. And it's very difficult for him, but he seems to be the one putting in the most effort. We see Michael, we see Isabel kind of trying to, but it's more comedic. There's nothing truly comedic about the way that Max is rejecting his destiny. And I think rejecting destiny is not only virtuous, but entirely heroic. I think Max is an excellent character, portrayed beautifully well. Because when you're a teenager, you feel like you are, everything's preordained. You feel like you are boxed in, limited, categorized as if some shadowy hand, either a shadow government or anything, any kind of metaphorical thing we could put here is kind of guiding your steps. You know, circumstance, privilege, anything, sexuality, anything is kind of determining your will, right? And Max is rejecting that cosmic narrative. And that's what makes it so interesting because this is like a problem that a lot of postmodern characters have. It's an existentialist uh, dilemma that I think every human being goes through at one point, at one point or another. And what Jason Katims is doing within Roswell is he's taking this problem and he's making it entirely cosmic. He's extending the existential nausea that Jean-Paul Sartre talked about, and he's extending it to the fucking galaxy. He's throwing it all the way out into the Milky Way, far into deep space, so that everyone feels existentially nauseous. But there's a character like Max who is rebelling against that and rejecting it, and I really do buy the love that he has with Liz. One of the best parts of the show is the obvious chemistry that Liz and Max share, that they have, that they seem to effortlessly be able to convey to the audience. I love Liz. Liz is fabulous. Liz is so fucking cute and adorable. And Fury Appleby is such a great actor because there's so much pathos within her performance. I hate seeing her cry or be vulnerable because it actually is aching to watch. Like it hurts. It hurts. She's so good and you care so much about her. I just thought she gave a phenomenal performance, especially as being like the impetus or the shot heard round the world, like the fuse that is lit. This entire story of Max ultimately taking control of his own destiny, rejecting the grand narrative that has been pre-planned for him, or at least trying to, because that's the problem with postmodernism is that it's ultimately mostly hopeless. But you should still fight anyway. One must imagine both Sisyphus and Max Evans happy. Is her getting shot at the Crashdown Cafe and Max using his powers to save her. That starts everything. And in the final episode of the season, Liz is like, "Your life ended the day you exposed yourself by saving my life." And he's like, "No, that's when it started. That's when I started making true decisions, not living in existential fear. That's when I started making true decisions and actually living life itself, because life itself is all about the unexpected, at least purely experiencing life itself." Isabel, Katherine Heigl, I love you. Marry me, please. I love you, Katherine Heigl. You're so amazing on this show. Okay, that's the first thing that blew my mind was what they did with Isabel here. They all have like alien powers. I'm not sure if they all share them, but they all have like a primary one that they do. Like Max is a healer. It seems like Michael is more lethal, so like a killer, enforcer sort of. And Isabel, her power is the ability to enter others' dreams. She can enter dreams of other people to spy on their subconscious. And this makes her a hyper literal dream girl, and that blows my mind. That blows my mind. Oh my God, that is ridiculous, and I fucking love it. Yeah, Katherine Heigl's super sexy, and this show is making this character Isabel into an actual dream girl. I was just so floored by the audacity of it, of the metaphor. It's amazing. The physical metaphor, the physical poetry of it all. I thought it was just so audacious. honestly. And Katherine Heigl's great here. I hope they give her some more interesting things to do in the second season. But what she was able to do in the first, I thought was fabulous. She's this kind of glacial beauty that you just gravitate towards. The camera loves her, the cinema loves her, television loves her. You just want to be around her. I thought she was just so excellent. Max is my favorite character of the show philosophically, but the one who is definitely the most captivating is Isabel. You can't take your eyes off her. I thought she was great. I thought that the narrative tried to have her be overshadowed by not only Michael and Max, but also Tess when she eventually showed up as well. Uh, no, I want to put a huge spotlight on Isabel because Katherine Heigl is, I think she's an extraordinary actor. Like I love 27 Dresses, Bride of Chucky, Knocked Up. I've always loved Katherine Heigl, and I want to see what we can do with her. Um, we built her up as this alien dream girl. Let's play with that a little bit. I'm not saying deconstruct it, but I would like the second and third season to maybe weaponize that. You know, what if we weaponized the crushes of our teenage years? What if we weaponized those kind of nostalgic fantasies or the fantasies of nostalgia itself? I think we can do a lot of cool things with Isabel. I loved her to death. She had a great deal of feminine sensitivity to her that I thought was just fucking wonderful to interact with. Michael is very cool. Michael's lovely. Takes a minute to get over that fucking hair, but I love it. I love the hair. It's just holy shit, man. Holy shit. Michael's our hot-headed little wild card, love and death. We get to investigate a lot of cool things from Michael, including abuse. He is certainly our character below the poverty line, and I always like seeing that sort of representation within these shows. It doesn't happen too often. I like that Michael is unpredictable and dangerous, and I actually like the chemistry he had with Maria a lot. Maria, kind of annoying, not gonna lie, kind of an annoying character, but whenever she's around Michael, I like what she brings out of Michael. I like the sensitivity that is kind of not effortlessly pulled, like she has to fucking yank the sensitivity out of the kid because he's so stubborn, because he's been so emotionally and physically hurt all his life. Uh, when she's in his arms, he feels found. The part where his adoptive father is beating him, and he goes over to Maria's house, and she lets him in, and it's like it was raining, and then it takes her a minute to realize that that's not just those aren't just raindrops; those are teardrops. He's crying, and she cradles him all night like a baby, just like how Max's life truly started when he exposed himself within the Crashdown Cafe by saving Liz. I like to believe that Michael's life truly started being cradled like an infant in the bed by the first person that he ever was open with emotionally. First woman he ever opened up to. I wish Isabel had a huge emotional moment like that too, but she's really not that kind of character. I'm not saying it's like she's cold, but like that's the exterior that she presents, and we do get a lot of times where a lot of opportunities to see the sensitivities beneath that cold exterior. It's just we didn't have that huge moment of like the other two, I think, in their own way decided to take the reins, take control of their own lives. And I wanted some big rejection from Isabel as well. We got close a few times, but she never had that grand moment. So I'm hoping season two. I'm just obsessed with Katherine Heigl. So I'm hoping that season two gives me a lot more Katherine Heigl and a lot more things for her to do. You know, I hope I hope that I don't know, network execs, Jason Katims himself, or the general public were like, we love Isabel. Give us more Isabel. Give us everything Isabel. I wouldn't mind if the show was just about Isabel in the second season. I love you, Max, but you are no Isabel. Colin Hanks is the weak link of the show. I mean, I think he's the most untalented nepo baby I've ever been forced to watch. There's no chemistry between him and Katherine Heigl. He plays Alex. Uh, there's no chemistry at all between Alex and Isabel. It is fucking dumb. It sucks. It sucks, and I don't know why they insist upon that stupid relationship so much. There's nothing there. And Alex, he's not a completely unnecessary character. The most unnecessary character is Kyle, but I like Kyle more than I like Alex. Alex, how about we get a romantic interest for Isabel that isn't completely boring, that isn't the polar opposite of her. Let's get her something interesting. I think that the idea that Michael and Isabel are engineered to be each other's fucking lovers and soulmates, that's interesting. That's cool. I would like to see the kind of drama and the narratives, the many different narratives that could just branch out from exploring that more. I like the idea of Isabel and Michael together too. I like that a lot, actually. I don't like Colin Hanks as an actor. I don't like Alex as a character very much. Alex was just nothing. He was a big old nothing. Kyle was nothing too, but at least Kyle, there's some sort of self-awareness from the actor who played him that makes him a bit more likable. Like, I feel like when we get past like the halfway mark of the season, the actor who played Kyle is like, I'm clearly irrelevant here. No one cares about me as a character. The writers hardly even care. So he's just gonna fucking go for it. It was fun watching Kyle near the end. Kyle's father, William Sadler. Now that man is a national treasure. I love William Sadler. I would say that he is well respected within like cult film and television communities, but not nearly as much as he should be. That man's a legend. He's great and he's so fucking good on Roswell. I love this character. That's what I mean by like these arcs coming to a nearly brilliant completion by the end of this first season. I love how he turns around. I love how he embraces Max and Isabel and Michael. I love how he is on their side by the end, how he is the primary antagonist for most of it until you realize that exploitation, that punishment, isn't localized. It's not the local government or the local police you should be worried about. It's the federal one. It's the largest one possible, and it's elite FBI and CIA units that are hounding you, that are destroying you, that are the true culprits. Everyone's a pawn. Even the big bad wolf that runs your town, he's not. He's nothing. He's nothing compared to what government secrecy could do when challenged. Someone I loved seeing was Julie Benz. I always loved seeing Julie Benz, have a big old crush on her, not ashamed to admit it. Who would be? She's gorgeous and sexy and beautiful and always fun to watch in all these teen dramas. You never want to be Julie Benz on a teen drama, though. Never ends well for her. She played Miss Topolsky here, a kind of undercover FBI agent who I just had a great time being around. I wish we had a little bit more of her, but even in that situation, she gets exposed by the kids, but she gets to come back to the show and complete her arc. Like it's a thoughtful fucking season. It's a very thoughtful season, and oftentimes I was thrilled watching it dance, watching it work because it worked really, really well. But the most interesting thing always with this show, we have to go back to, if you want to talk about interesting analysis, the most interesting point of interest is Max Evans, is rejecting the narrative, is trying his best to express free will, trying his best to be the controller of his destiny, to be in control of his decisions, and not biologically engineered to do so, and not being manipulated into doing certain things by the long, shadowy arm of a government or by anything else that he doesn't quite understand the intentions of, and how almost futile that can seem. And that's what makes him heroic because no matter what, he is trying to fight everything. Every impulse in his body is telling him to be with Tess, is telling him to alienate Liz, Alex, Maria, the humans. Every impulse in his body is telling him to follow destiny, but there's this thing that could only be called the human spirit, right? Or the human condition. The human experience itself kind of fosters this absurd notion within us that We have to rebel against that. Rebel against your destiny. Be who you want to be. Be something, if that's possible. And I keep dwelling on the fact that it most likely is impossible. That's not going to stop postmodern brats like Max from trying so hard to fight against destiny with everything he's got. That's what makes Roswell really interesting. At the end of the season, we kind of have a revelation that Max, Isabel, Tess, Michael, they are biologically engineered alien clones. Like they were aliens mixed with some human DNA to make them kind of present as human, but they are clones of very important figures, public figures and leaders, military ones of an alien planet. And they kind of have like a Superman 1 moment, you know, of like, I don't know, Gar-El or whatever the fuck Marlon Brando's name was in Superman. Kind of have like a holographic image of their mother coming down and kind of giving us all this very necessary exposition. Um, and it felt like a reward after a whole season of wondering what the fuck is going on. That seems to be it, which also has some sort of analytical value as well. Jason Katims, I think, is I don't know if he's a genius of television, but he definitely knows a lot about how to make a good show and clearly knows a lot about archetypes and frameworks and narrative systems. So if these are clones, they're cloned in from sci-fi shows. They're being cloned in from your Star Trek, from the X-Files. They are clones of those, but they are forced to go through the havoc of teen angst. And one of the consequences, one of these effects, the primary effect of teen angst is rebellion. And that's what Max, Isabel, and Michael are going through, each in their own ways. With Max, it's the most virtuous and the most heroic. This show has a lot to offer, and I think I'll have quite a bit more to say on season 2 and season 3. But season 1, I thought there was a lot of greatness here. I was very impressed by it, very entertained consistently, and it's a pretty funny show. There are some really funny lines, a lot of cute, cheeky moments, a great amount of chemistry. The show likes to have quite a few hot moments as well. Like it's even an erotic show. There's a lot to like about this show, and I like just about everything about it. Like I like everything about Roswell. It's very good. Um, okay, Alex is the one thing I don't really like about the show. Colin Hanks is just so fucking unlikable. It's got the most punchable face I've ever seen. I don't know how else to put it. He's just so unlikable. No, thank you. Take it back. I don't want Alex. Take him back. God. Alex is fixable. Everything that I see in the show that was sort of lacking about the first season, these aren't irreparable. You can fix all of these problems very easily. Uh, it's just so cool. It's just so fucking good. But ultimately, right now, we are focused on the things I like to see the most within postmodern teen television, which is a character rejecting the narrative, which in the case of Roswell means rejecting destiny, rebelling against it with everything you've got, even if it's an ultimately hopeless campaign against fate itself. Like I love that. I love that, and we're getting that with Max Evans. And I hope he doesn't give up on Liz. He can't give up on Liz. Who would give up on Liz? She was gorgeous and she was awesome and adorable. I want to explore more of her because then you have to, because as we've established in season 1 and established it beautifully, that Max is rejecting the narrative and trying to have some sort of free will. Uh, what does that mean for Liz then? What does it mean for Maria? Hell, Alex, you can get interesting too. Come on, get in this group. Are you guys just cogs in the wheel? Are you guys completely irrelevant? Are you just pawns in a grander narrative of other narratives, of a bunch of little meta narratives? Is your destiny as important as your boyfriend's? Like, is your destiny as important as the other people's in your lives? Like, I want to see some sort of scale that can measure the weight of two beautiful existential crises, you know? And I think that if anyone can do it, it's the character Liz. Uh, I want her to be equally as significant as Max in her own very human way. you know? Destiny exists for her too. Or maybe she can be that wrecking ball that you need, that gorgeous wrecking ball that just obliterates the idea of destiny. Who would believe fate if it kept you away from the woman that you love? Fuck fate then. I'm extremely excited. There's a lot of cool directions we can go into. A lot of cool directions. I think Liz is going to be a fascinating character to deal with. An even more fascinating character to deal with because I loved her in season one. But I think we're going to lose some of that naivety, which is good, and kind of get to the heart of the matter of her character, and we can properly study her in season two and three. But that's it for me, really. I loved this show. I loved it. It was great. It was really great. I really liked it. Really enjoyed my time in Roswell. Can't wait to be back talking about season two. I'm going to take a nap. I feel exhausted, and hopefully, a little blonde alien enters my dream and makes everything better. I don't know. Thank you for watching my video. Oh, and thank you for watching along with Roswell. If you are, I like having this almost like an art club, like a TV club. But thank you. Can't wait to be back. Oh, the Dido song's rad. The uh the opening sequence is wonderful. It gets the I always love opening sequences, and this opening sequence of Roswell, it gets the mood down perfectly, and it's so atmospheric, and it's erotic. Once again, it's a pretty erotic opening, and I love that Dido song. I won't go. I won't breathe. Like, it's so fucking good. That's all. Thank you. And this was the point where Roswell turned into high art. Well, baby girl, if you could take a chance, open up the door and maybe shake your own. We're gonna take you to the floor tonight. This is fucking amazing. I'm your cult boyfriend, and I'm talking about season two of Roswell today. Wow. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Masterpiece. Masterful stuff. Oh my God. Every single criticism, even the minor ones that I had in the first video I made about season one, they were all addressed and corrected, transcended, blew my mind in 1,000 different ways. Oh my God, I'm talking about ridiculously good teen TV today. This was perfect teen drama. Blew my mind. There are a lot of things that really makes this season just completely wild. I think that the most interesting part behind the scenes, right, is that apart from fans being rabid and super devoted to the show and sending tons of Tabasco sauce to the WB headquarters or their offices, going, please put Roswell back on the air, because this is one of those shows like Veronica Mars, or like, I think, to be more prescient or more apt for where I'm going, a lot like Star Trek, how that was canceled, or always on the verge of being canceled, but the fans were just so devoted to it that it kept getting Star Trek back on the air, at least for 3 seasons, just like Roswell, by the way. But yeah, there was fan campaigns to keep this show on the air, and Roswell seemed to be a show that was always on the chopping block. I think the ratings must have been nearly abysmal, considering that halfway through season two, Maria starts appearing before the start of every episode, going, all right, so there's been some confusion, and great, I'm going to clear it all up for you. This is the planet where Max, Isabel, and Michael are from, like drawing on a chalkboard. I thought, like, that was just so impromptu. Obviously, a studio note, and she just kept popping up, like, okay, so I know you haven't seen an episode in a while, like, so self aware about it, but where I was originally going was fans are super devoted to the show, and you can kind of see that in the way that the show interacts with itself. I'm not just talking about self-referential cleverness. I'm not just talking about being self-aware. I think it interacts with fan theories while the show is actually manifesting itself. But the coolest thing about this season, I think what makes it so much better than the first, and to me, season two of Roswell rivals season two of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And if you know anything about me, that's a huge compliment. Season two is one of the best seasons of Buffy. The best season of Buffy is season three, but season two is like fucking great. And season two of Roswell rivals that. Different kind of vibe, and there's some slightly Whedon-esque stuff here, but the name is Ronald D. Moore. Ronald Moore joined Roswell in season two. I like Ronald D. Moore quite a bit. Roswell hired actual Star Trek writers for the second season. I think that Ronald D. Moore even became a showrunner of Roswell. I'm not sure where Jason Katims, like, they must have been co-showrunners, right? Someone who knows a lot more about Roswell tell me, because Jason Katims was still there as a head writer. I saw his name in the credits a lot. And while the show is kind of different from the first season in a lot of ways, it doesn't feel like a huge departure. So I think Jason Katims was still there with Ronald D. Moore. But it's fascinating seeing this titan, this legend of 90s Star Trek interacting with teen drama. And the show does become a bit more focused on science fiction, but I thought that they balanced out the teen drama perfectly, because that's why I think Jason Tatum still has to be there, because the teen drama was even better than it was in the first season. We go through a lot of wild, tender, sensitive, vengeful, sort of secretive storylines with our characters here that really challenge them in emotional and philosophical ways. Let's talk about Max and Liz. Like, every character got exponentially better, like so much better. Even the ones I loved to death got even better. And Max and Liz, oh my God, what a hold the phone, man. Like, they're so good. They're so good this season. Of course, Max, as we covered in season one, he's a pure existentialist, trying to carve out his own destiny, trying to rebel against fate, because he's supposed to be some sort of king. He's supposed to be a great leader, and he doesn't want that responsibility. But like I said, he's a postmodern brat because he is rejecting the narrative, the grand narrative, the cosmic narrative, where Roswell is concerned. He's rejecting a cosmic, a galactic narrative, right? He's rejecting the narrative of the cosmos, and that's like the biggest, largest act of defiance that a postmodern brat has possibly ever done within a teen drama. And just like I said in season one, normally those kinds of revolts against destiny, those campaigns against fate, are ultimately hopeless. But the point is you have to keep trying, but you will ultimately fail. Like, that's the tragedy of postmodernism. Um, Failure. And Max sees himself become somewhat of a villain as this story progresses. He of course redeems himself near the end, but Tess has mind warped him and manipulated him to be so kind of cruel to Isabel and to Liz, both of them. He becomes an emotional tyrant. The nasty little hands of destiny had its hands around his throat. Max is still a postmodern hero. He's still a brat. He's still great. He's still wonderful. But near the end of the season, where I'm just gonna say it, where Alex dies. I'll talk about Alex in a minute. After Alex dies, and a little bit before that too, Max is being manipulated the entire time by Tess in a very large way. So he becomes almost an antagonist to the narrative. And Liz, our fucking perfect, beautiful angel, gets to become the hero, gets to completely become this obsessive detective hero, like the best friend you could ever have. Basically, if I was ever murdered, I would want either Liz Parker or Veronica Mars to be on the case. Absolutely. And throughout Liz's narrative, she's found a sort of emotional scale that could measure the weight of her options, of her romances, of her own philosophy that I thought got a little overshadowed in season one. But here we can really see Liz challenge not only herself and the friends around her, but the framework of the show itself. There's a thing that happens in season two with a lot of teen dramas where you have a main couple who have an enormous amount of chemistry, and you let them get together in season one, and then you have to keep them apart in season two. This happens quite often, actually. It just brought up Veronica Mars. It happened there. Happened on One Tree Hill. Uh, Happened on the OC too. Like it happens in so many of these shows, and Roswell had to follow suit. And it's not just a trope. It makes sense why it happens in these shows because you can't give the audience what they want like immediately and then keep it that way. You have to kind of frustrate the situation. That's why it's a teen drama. But Roswell has its own clever spin on that structural dynamic, that romantic structural dynamic, because it has Liz defy not only the audience wants and expectations, but defies the narrative systems of the show as well. Like, because the narrative system of the show depends on it. And even Max's existential quest to defy his own royalty is challenged by Liz refusing to be that catalyst, be that vehicle, or be objectified by Max's existential quest. I think that's the biggest thing because in season one, she was an object of it. She was some sort of I loved her in season one, but she was sort of objectified by Max's quest for existential autonomy, for like ownership over his future. She became an object within that narrative rather than a compelling character within it. And in season two, she's refusing to be objectified by anyone's narrative and becomes super independent and super fucking awesome and cool. And I even didn't mind her flirting and hanging out with Devin Gummersall from My So-Called Life as a sort of like dark horse romantic candidate. Like I liked everything that she did this season, and Shiri Appleby by far, I think is has gave the best performance of season two by far. By far, she was intense. She was adorable. Um, she was sexy and she was just unpredictable a lot of the time. If there's any character that could make me cry, I'm pretty sure it's Liz. I'm pretty sure she came close this season as well. It's hard not to feel for her. She's so fucking. Shiri Appleby is just so fucking expressive and spot on. She never misses as an actress, never misses. At least throughout season two, every line was perfect way to deliver it. Every emotion, every expression, every movement just entirely graceful and beautiful. But she becomes the de facto protagonist by the end of the show. She's the one who's obsessed with Alex's death and believes that something's not adding up because and that goes along with it too, because she's no longer being objectified by the narrative. Because I know I'm talking about like complicated postmodern stuff right now, but bear with me. I'm going to talk about funner stuff in a minute, but I have to get this like primary thought out there because this is what kind of makes Roswell so interesting and cool from like a deep philosophical or analytical level. Because she's obsessed with Alex's demise, and she believes there's something wrong with it. The rest, everyone else has been mind warped by tests, and like reality isn't exactly what it seems. And postmodernism is really awesome because it constantly challenges its own narrative frameworks, right? And what did Tess build inside Kyle's head? What did Tess build inside Alex's head? A false narrative framework that was starting to fall apart, to crumble, to show the artifice that was even starting to um have detrimental, um, cruel effects on Alex because he had been so mind warped by that point that his brain couldn't take it anymore. And that's how he actually died because Tess did one final mind warp on him in front of Kyle that Alex's brain couldn't take and he just fucking died. One more false narrative. Like, you can only build so many false narratives on top of the narrative system until it completely collapses. And the same is true of us as people. So it goes back to what I'm talking about with Liz completely challenging the narrative system around her and refusing to be an object of the narrative and taking control of it and turning it into an entirely new direction, which is like a murder mystery near the end. Like she takes complete control of the sci-fi narrative and turns it into a murder mystery, turns it into a detective story. She does that. The narrative doesn't, because the narrative that she's surrounded by is one that's been manipulated by Tess, and she rejects that falsehood, the falsity of Tess's superficial narrative systems. She rejects it, and she refuses to become objectified by the narrative. And postmodern art is really cool because it makes a lot of comments about how everyone is objectified by the meta narrative, by the narratives of their own lives. It makes a lot of statements about that. And Liz, we are seeing like more than Max has ever accomplished as an existential hero. Liz is also a postmodern brat at this point, and a far more successful one than Max. That she has completely rejected the narrative system of Hess, of Roswell up to that point, and transcended the limitations of it to reach a new sincerity, which was completing an arc that had seemed refused by the show itself. And her and Max got together again. I know that that's like a lot to take in. It's what I find to be one of the most interesting things about the show, so I did have to cover that. I hope it made sense to you. I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautifully done. With Liz and Max, we do the most complicated things on the show. That's where I can really get lost with my philosophical postmodern diatribe. And I understand that, but just think about that, because that's actually really cool to just work out in your brain just how brilliant that all is. And yeah, you get the sense that Ronald D. Moore from Star Trek is doing these things that he's always wanted to do, but never necessarily had that freedom. And teen drama gives you the freedom to be as hysterical as possible with your messaging. And thank God Roswell happened. Roswell season two is a fucking masterpiece. I just brought up Alex a few times. Season one, I had my issues with Alex. By issues, I mean I fucking hated the kid. I thought he was a stupid, unnecessary character, and that Colin Hanks is a terrible actor. I still think Colin Hanks is a terrible actor. And I still think that, okay, until he died, he was even more irrelevant than he was in season one. And this is what makes television such a beautiful kind of art. Because originally Alex wasn't supposed to die, but Colin got offers for film roles. I wonder how he got that. It's not like he has like a really famous father or anything. I guess he just did that all on his own. Fucking talentless little nepo baby. I'm getting off track and kind of aggressively mean, but he was leaving to go make films. Is the point? So the writers had to figure out a way to write him out, and they came up with his death, which makes everything just so philosophically complicated, narratively sophisticated, and just outrageously suspenseful. Like, I was hooked from the moment he died, because it's told so well. Because at first you do think Liz is kind of like it's a coping mechanism, um, for the loss of her friend, of her dear friend. I think it's a coping mechanism, her obsession and her refusal, her denial of the suicide narrative that Tess had kind of manipulated and planted in other people's minds, had staged. Because it's all a stage, it's all a narrative. This is what postmodern art is, guys. And you think that Liz is just trying to cope, and then slowly, because it's written so fucking well, slowly you kind of go over to her side, and then you have to wonder if you're becoming fanatical as well. It's done so well. And to think that that wasn't planned, that was seemingly on the fly, just makes you step back and go, television is such a beautiful art form because it forces these creative people. And I'm going to call Ronald D. Moore and Jason Katims geniuses at this point. Roswell is a work of genius, and those are the two geniuses who provided it to us. They're great, but it forces geniuses to act quickly, almost by almost by reflex. It's gut over brain when it comes to instinct with television, when you're forced to think that fast. And wow, Alex's murder is such an incredible development. I'm astonished by the genius of both Moore and Cadams. Like, handled it perfectly. Jesus Christ. But in Alex's death, though, he becomes so important, so symbolically important. He may have been an irrelevant character, but what like to the narrative itself, but what was relevant, what was important about him was the way that everyone felt about him. Not necessarily how the audience felt. And I think I'm in the minority when Alex died in real time. fans lost their minds, posted a bunch of memorial websites, came up with a bunch of different wild theories about how to bring him back. I don't get it. Sorry, he was annoying, stupid, weird, and a bore. But within his death, even I felt mournful of his absence. And through his death, we're able to challenge all the other characters in a lot of different ways. I mean, it helps Michael complete his arc fully, the transformation of him becoming possibly the most sensitive and tender character of the second season, which is a shocking surprise, and nothing feels contrived about it. Michael is so sensitive and tender, and Maria, who I thought was a little annoying in season one, even she's written differently, or at least there's more charm to her character, and there's a lot more emotion that you can feel. And I love Michael and Maria together here. The sensitivity, there's something that feels genuine about it. I really love that. Kyle, who I also called irrelevant in season one because he was hardly in the show. Like he was maybe in half the episodes, it felt like. Near the end, he was hardly there. Kyle was irrelevant in season one, but I still liked him because the actors seemed to be self-aware and fun about it. Come on, there were even those moments where they were like, the season one with the radio show, and Liz had to pick between three different guys, and Kyle was one of them, and they go over and they're like, Kyle, what do you want to say? And he's just like, I'm just happy to be here. Like that was genuinely his character for most of season one. Just happy to be here, man. Like there was a certain amount of self-awareness that made Kyle likable in season one. But in season two, he became one of my favorite characters. He's hilarious. He is touching, but I gotta stress hilarious. He is the funniest part of this whole show. And there's something awkward and adorable about him as well, which is funny coming from the jock archetype, right? And there's something heartbreaking too and tragic because Tess, who is our big bad, our actual villain of the entire season, um, it's complicated because it's not like she's completely bad. It's not like she's completely awful. And the dynamic that Tess was able to form with both Kyle and his father, it's heartbreaking seeing that come to fruition and then have to be demolished because of Tess's manipulation, you know? And there is a genuine connection between Tess and Kyle's dad as well. There's a genuine connection. Like when Tess tries out like when Tess cheekily calls Valenti dad. Like that was a real moment. It wasn't fake. And she didn't like having to mind warp Kyle. She really didn't give a damn about mind warping Alex, and neither do I. Make him do something useful. Make him go translate that book. He was doing nothing useful. Never mind. You know what I'm saying. It was just great seeing them figure out how to use him because I'm sure they were like, there's something great in both Kyle and Alex, and we have to bring it out of these characters. And they succeeded enormously. Kyle, he was so funny. He was so awesome. I loved him. He was so good. Oh my God, he's one of my favorite characters. It was a joy every time Kyle showed up on screen. Isabel Evans, you are still my dream girl. I still love you. And yeah, we weaponized her ability when she was tracking down um someone who was kidnapping women and infecting them with alien parasites. Like we did weaponize that. And we did have a lot of fun with that ability as well. And Isabel, there is a lot more of a spotlight on her, and which is great because Katherine Heigl is a star. And I love like I said last time, Cameron loves her, television loves her, cinema loves her. She's incredible to watch. And one of my biggest complaints from season one was that I felt like Michael and Max both got this emotional moment that led to a sort of emotional rebirth within them, at least a human one, like the birth of the humanity within them that might come through adolescence, at least metaphorically. And Isabel didn't seem to have that in season one. By season three of the second season, with her surprise party, we get that emotional moment. She returned to the pod chamber, the only place where she had ever seen her mother, that holographic image of her mother. And she breaks down. She weeps. She cries by herself. And it was that emotional moment that I was waiting for, and it's the birth of the humanity within her, too. And of course, it couldn't be shared, right? Because Michael's big emotional moment in season one was crying in Maria's arms. Max's big emotional moment or big moment of birth as within the humanity within himself came within the crash down in the very first scene, saving Liz's life and looking so lovingly into her eyes. With Isabel, that huge emotional moment couldn't be shared with anyone because that's the kind of character that she is. She's a glacial beauty with an interior that is so sensitive, but we don't get to see it because it's such a vulnerability within her. We don't get to see it too often because it's such a huge vulnerability. She'll only completely let go, either by herself in the pod chamber, like in the third episode, or near the end of the show with Alex's memory, with the memory of him. Those are the only times she's truly able to completely break down, which is alone. There's a great amount of loneliness to Isabel, and that really comes through in Katherine Heigl's performance. And before you accuse me of treating this too seriously, yeah, this show is a lot of fun. It's wild. It's crazy. It's awesome. That's why I do think it is like Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Star Trek, honestly. That's the closest thing I can come to providing like an accurate like comparison. Buffy had a lot of like really fun moments too, but the emotional ones hit even harder on almost on account of those light moments. Roswell is the same way, but it has a certain kind of Star Trek intellectualism that when incorporated with the tropes of teen drama, make for something totally unique that I've never, ever, ever seen before. Because Star Trek is like a specific brand of sci-fi. It has its own filmic language unto itself. Like it has its own structural system that is unique to Star Trek. And applying some of that thought, some of that narrative and metaphorical thought to Roswell is fascinating to me. We do a lot of awesome things here that are from the Star Trek vocabulary. We have dark universe versions of these people, right? And it's so much fun because, like, the dark universe, like, evil mirror world of fucking the mirror versions of our alien leads are new metal rejects in NYC. That's so fucking good. They were, oh my God, it was awesome. Catherine Heigl had so much fun. You could tell she had so much fun, dude, playing that role. We had so many different things like that. And you're transporting these, specifically Star Trek, but you're incorporating these Star Trek tropes within the fabric of teen angst, which morphs and transmutates, transforms everything that it touches. And what it does to Star Trek language is that it makes it so emotional, so wanting, so lonely, and so funny. You know, love that. Everyone did so well on this show. In front of the camera, behind the camera, everywhere. And to think that this was a season that must have been made with a lot of studio notes, a lot of studio interference because this show was struggling. And they were able to provide us with such a masterpiece in the end. In spite of everything, it rose above every obstacle that must have been in place, and it's just outrageous to really consider. It's such an outrageously good show. This was such a beautiful season. I think it's 10 times better than season 1. I was saying in the last video that I was hoping that I could call this show masterful eventually. Well, it's not only masterful, it's one of the all-time greats at this point. Season 2 was lovely. I've heard conflicting things about the third season, but I'm excited. I'm excited to give it a shot. You know, I got one masterpiece out of it, and that's more than you could ever expect from anything. Uh, Season 2 as a whole is beautiful, beautiful teen television, beautiful postmodern teen art. I love it for that. Two funny things I'm going to put at the very end of this video that no one probably cares about. Uh, I want to start a fan theory that 27 Dresses is secretly a sequel to Roswell.
Oh, almost forgot. Bye.
Thanks for everything, Brandy.
No problem.
Do I have to ask?
That was Tracy and Glenn. They just got married, and I was their makeup owner.
Who's that?
That's Dave. Cake?
Also, we get a fucking baby Logan Eccles showing up here. We get Jason Doring showing up in the episode where Alex dies. And he's like the Thai delivery guy, the Thai food delivery kid. And what happens to him? Liz Parker interrogates him.
He was losing it, and you could totally see it in his eyes. I mean, he was on his way out of this life.
Is that a fact?
Oh,
I'd like to ask you some questions if you have the time.
Why is Jason Doring being interrogated everywhere he goes?
How many episodes of NYPD Blue did you have to watch to get the finger tapping down?
I asked you a question.
And I ignored it and moved on. Keep up.
Those are just fun things that no one probably cares about but me. But like I said, the show's so much fun. Like we can think it, we can even overthink it, and that's part of the fun of analyzing anything. But what you should remember more than anything is that I think that this show is really sensitive, and I think it's very funny and entertaining, like more than anything else. It's just such a great show, such a fabulous and phenomenal one, and I can't wait for season 3. Season 2, masterpiece. Has my whole heart right now. I loved it. I've never seen anything quite like it. There's all of the different parts that made it so great. It's not just lightning in a bottle. It's purely brilliant. It's perfect. What? 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 What did I just watch, though? What was that? What was that? That was Roswell season 3. Is what the fuck that was? How? How did it get this bad this quickly? Uh, Last video I made for Roswell season 2, I was here telling you that it was a masterpiece, and I stand by that. It's one of the best seasons of teen drama I have ever watched. It's so fucking good. It's masterful. Absolutely, purely brilliant and perfect. I loved season 2. Um, and now it's a complete 180. Season 3 is one of the worst seasons of teen drama I've ever seen. You went from one of the best to one of the worst, and that qualitative leap is giving me whiplash. I hate it. I hated it. Fucking hated it. Sorry. Not as much as I hate my hair, though. No. Oh, okay. Okay. Where do I even start? Does it even matter where I start? There was nothing good about this season. Well, I mean, let's start at the first episode. Let's talk about some stuff that might be of interest or value to us. Jason Katims, Ronald D. Moore, David Nutter, these are the big people behind this series. Possibly the most important person is likely Jason Katims, as he developed it, created it. And before Roswell, he worked on My So-Called Life with Winnie Holtzman, and My So-Called Life is so fucking good. It's just amazing. And after Roswell, he worked on and co-developed Friday Night Lights with Peter Berg. And the very first episode of the third season is quite revealing, like compositionally. There's a lot of handheld camera work done. The color grading's very intense. It's a nearly documentary style approach. It feels grittier and it feels more immediate and urgent, which is exactly how Friday Night Lights was filmed. So this the compositional style of Friday Night Lights was visible in at least the first episode of Roswell. They didn't keep it. They didn't stay loyal to that first episode's compositional style. They kind of went back to more traditional visual storytelling methods, which thank God for that because I kind of hate that style. To be honest, it was my biggest criticism of Friday Night Lights, but go watch my Friday Night Lights analysis videos if you want to know why I hate that handheld documentary style approach when it comes to teen drama. Um, I just think it's very interesting seeing like, oh shit, Jason Katims was already experimenting with this uh, different sort of approach, visual approach, even back then, back in 2001. So Yeah, I mean that's interesting to me. I was watching it and I just felt like I was watching a Friday Night Lights episode. Like it is compositionally a Friday Night Lights episode. It's really cool actually to see Jason Katims, the auteur, kind of proving that he is a television auteur. And even though I hate season three, I still think that Jason Katims and Ronald D. Moore are both geniuses. I just am having difficulty comprehending, evaluating just how bad season three got. Like, season three of Roswell feels like season six of any other show. It feels like bottom of the barrel ideas. I'm normally a lot more charitable to shows in their later seasons, from like season six to eight, if they get that far, because that's kind of when the writers start to go a little kooky, a little mad, a little stir crazy, and start throwing everything at the wall and doing every silly, stupid idea that they have. Having fun with it, I guess. But that shouldn't happen in season three. Seasons one through four should be your show at its peak, and season three of Roswell feels like season six of any other teen drama. It feels like they've run out of ideas really early on in the game. And the ideas that were still ongoing, the narratives that were still ongoing that carried over from the first and second season, they completely wasted, you know? Like I liked that I missed Tess so much. That's good. You had me miss like an antagonistic character. That's great. But then when she reappears in the third season of Roswell, just to do some stupid self-sacrificing murder thing, uh, getting killed. That's so dumb. I don't know. I just hated it. It was so dumb. The only thing I liked about Tess coming back were her interactions with Kyle and Kyle's father. That's it. That dynamic was the only interesting part. Everything was so wasted. The baby was wasted because Max spends this entire time looking for his baby. And the second he gets the baby, he gives it up. And then the final episode, look, I think that it should have been called Copium or something. Like they knew it was their last one, and the writers and the actors all seemed pretty fucking equally relieved and frustrated with the show itself, and I totally understand that feeling. The last episode was a fucking mess. The entire season is a mess. All right, and I remember back in season one, I said I'd like it if Isabel was the spotlight of the entire show because Katherine Heigl's a star, and I'm practically obsessed with her. I still stand by that, and Isabel has like a larger role to play in the third season. I just hate everything they did with her. How are you going to replace Alex, her first love interest, who I thought was boring and a big pile of nothing? I thought he was just completely irrelevant and unimportant, with Jesse Ramirez, who was even less interesting, less captivating, and he has even less chemistry with Isabel. It was terrible. It was terrible. Yeah, I would have loved to see more Isabel if we had followed the the buildup of the character from the first two seasons. All of a sudden, in the third season, she's not acting like a 18 or 19-year-old girl. She's acting like a 34-year-old housewife. What the fuck happened? What the fuck happened? Like, I was trying to be so kind to how they were treating Isabel and the other characters. So in my mind, I was like, well, this makes sense. And it does make sense slightly for the character because, as we've covered before, Isabel's extremely lonely, this glacial beauty who really just wants to open up and be herself and to kind of liberate herself emotionally and just be that wholesome woman that she wants to be. So, like, it makes sense that she would get married, but it doesn't make sense that she would get married to someone she only knew for like a couple months. It doesn't make any, the marriage doesn't make any sense. There's no logical sense in this entire show. It's almost as if Jason Katims, Ronald D. Moore, and company were deliberately trying to destroy their own project. It's like kamikaze here. Like they're deliberately trying to get canceled. Because nothing about the third season makes me think that anyone was taking this seriously anymore, apart from possibly the actors. Like the writers and the creatives, like they weren't even trying. There was nothing good. And some of the plot lines, some of the episodes were just so poorly designed that I have to think it's deliberate, especially if it's coming from a place of genius. As I've covered, I think Jason Katims and Ronald D. Moore are both genius television auteurs. So if these are done so miserably after I saw Katims do it pretty well in season one, and then the two of them, Moore and Katims together, doing it masterfully in season two, I'm left to assume exclusively that season three is a deliberate misfire, like a calculated failure. And it's like, are you just trying to fuck with the network, fuck with the audience, fuck with me? Fuck with the characters? It didn't make any sort of sense. Or did they get these studio notes that they had to follow, and every single note on every single page was just absurd, was just ridiculous, foolish, just completely fucking superficial and dumb? Like, did you have to, like, was that could be a scenario, you know? It's part of making television. I don't know how they could have gone so terribly wrong. At least Shiri Appleby is still spot on. I'm so impressed by her performance overall. Liz Parker, I thought became the most interesting character of the whole show in the second season. Um, I thought she became the true existentialist hero, kind of dethroning King Max in my mind from that sacred spot. Like Liz Parker is probably one of my favorite television characters of all time, based like specifically exclusively on the second season. The third season, nobody got out of this all right. Every character lost a large amount of dignity through all the stupid, messy shit that the writers forced them to go through. But performance-wise, Shiri Appleby is saying all these ridiculous things and moving all these absurd plot lines forward with a sort of commitment that I think is just commendable and admirable. I loved Shiri Appleby throughout this entire show. She's a legend in my eyes now. And Max Baer was great too. I'm sorry, Max Bear. Dude, he is so Max that I just think he's Max now. Like Jesus, like Jason Bear. Like I loved him on Dawson's Creek as a secondary antagonist to like kind of Abby Morgan's little bitch boy. I fucking loved him on Dawson's Creek and that one episode of Buffy where he played a villain as well. So I kind of had this antagonistic archetypal definition of him in my mind until I watched Roswell, and he's very good. He's very good. He commits to the bit, even when it gets super fucking stupid and ridiculous. And I think he's very attractive as well. So he's like fun to look at too. He's just as fun to look at as Shiri or Catherine were. Um, yeah, I don't think there's a weak link in the cast really. Everyone's doing fine. It just did like these are season six ideas. All right. Maria going to New York and refusing to sell out to like a pop music label. Like that's a season six idea. That's so awful. Isabel getting married to some random fucking lawyer is a season six idea, and Kavar coming to their honeymoon. These are all season six ideas. What the fuck happened? What the fuck happened? Season two was just masterful, incredible, beautiful, pitch perfect. What happened? I couldn't be simply moving from the WB to UPN. I know there was a network change. It couldn't have just been that. Like, what the fuck happened? You know, I, I don't know. I'm looking for any sort of excuse because I think either A, it's deliberate on the part of Kadams and Ronald D. Moore, or there's also the possibility that they weren't allowed to bring all of their WB writers over to UPN with them. That's certainly possible as well. And then you get a whole bunch of writers who don't truly understand the spirit of Roswell itself. Or three, the network completely ruined it. Or it could be a combination of all of those things, because I think the show ends not the third season ends not victoriously at all, not even sweetly, in my opinion. It has a very defeatist attitude near the end. The show feels self-defeated by the time we get to episode 18, the series finale of Roswell. So maybe we're watching everyone give up on the show in real time, the audience included. And I don't even blame the audience. It's as if the show wanted to get canceled. Now, I think season two was masterful, and I thought season one was very, very good. So I would have loved to see a full 5 or 6 season long series of this. I would have loved that. And have enough faith in Kadams and more that had the show got picked up for a season four, I don't think it would have been terrible. I think they could have fixed certain things. I don't think anything was unfixable. I just think this is one of the worst seasons of teen drama I've ever seen. I think it's miserable and a poor excuse for television. It's cartoonish. Like, there used to be some. It's so bizarre because every single episode has this, like, has these catastrophic consequences, life or death consequences. So like the stakes are a lot higher here, like episode by episode, episodically higher. but the show itself treats everything in this very cartoonish, more than whimsical, kind of infantile way that I can't take any situation seriously because they're all absurd. It's like the very worst episodes of Star Trek. Remember in season two, I was impressed by bringing over the vocabulary, the sci-fi vocabulary of Star Trek through Ronald D. Moore to Jason Kadam's playground of My So-Called Life. That's really cool and interesting. But now they're bringing all the worst ideas from Star Trek and incorporating them with all of the worst things that were born of My So-Called Life. It's like the worst of both worlds. How do you like that, Star Trek fans? How do you like that? The worst of both worlds. Um, if you don't like Star Trek, you should. What I did there was wordplay. It's pretty good. The most famous episode of Star Trek's probably a two-parter called "The Best of Both Worlds." So check it out. And what we get from Roswell season three is the worst of both teen drama and sci-fi television. There's nothing to analyze because there's nothing that demands to be taken seriously within this season. It begs to be ignored by the viewer. Unforgivable stuff here. And it's quite tragic. Like imagine what could have been. Imagine a world where people did tune into Roswell, right? Where a lot of people tuned into Roswell, where it had as much network support and viewership as something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer did, and there wasn't a lot of studio intervention, and Kadams and Moore were allowed to do basically anything that they wanted to do. Just imagine that. Imagine like the bangers that we could have got from that. I think it sucks that Roswell ended, but I think what sucks more is that the third season is so miserable that I was hoping it would end myself. Like I said, I would have loved a full six season series from Roswell, but after season three, I'm happy I don't have any more episodes of it to go through. And that's so bizarre to me. I don't think I've ever done this, gone from like a season fucking that I'm obsessed with, like season two, to a season that I absolutely despise and loathe, like season three. Like it's such a complete difference in everything. Fucking hated it. And I like to end these long, like, projects of analysis where I go over a television show with some sort of grand statement at the end about the show's main thesis. But I'm going to kind of refuse to do that with Roswell because season three didn't give me anything. It's a story of outsiders with a lot of amazing things, specifically in the second season. The first season was very good and said a lot of cool things as well, but season two, that was masterful. I don't know, I feel injured by how bad season three was because of how much hype I had for the 22 episodes that preceded it immediately. Like it's tragic to me. I'm extremely happy that I visited Roswell. Um, Overall, I greatly enjoyed my time. Uh, it's just that if you're looking for some sort of grand statement wrapping up all of the ideas presented by the show Roswell, you're gonna have to watch my season two video again because that's where they were, that's where they ended. Season three gives me no reason to go over that here. To exhaust myself analytically, it offers, I couldn't justify it. Honestly, season three is one of the worst seasons of teen drama I've ever seen. And that's the real tragedy of Roswell. Not that it got canceled too soon, but that it allowed itself to get so poor, so bad, so fast. But still, I'm going to watch the first two seasons again and again, most likely, and pretend that the third season never existed. Because those first two seasons, those are impactful, those are beautiful. Thank you for watching.